Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Tara's Baddies Club. It's been a moment since I put out a new episode. I've just been dealing with so much since True Crime and Paranormal Festival, trying to get out all those episodes. Also, I had COVID, so that really just wore me down for a minute as well. And then my 8th year survival anniversary is today, August 20th. So 2024. So I'm I don't really know the words for it, but on edge. There's so many words for it. On edge, just hyper vigilant lately. There's processing so much. There's a lot to go with this day, and it was gonna be my 2-year anniversary with my ex as well. And there was a People article last year that came out, and it's just a different day now because I'm also processing healing from that still. And that has been a big thing in my life. That relationship really meant a lot to me. And then I had a podcast with that person. But luckily, I get to do things that are amazing. And I get to help others create their story. And saying that is, in celebration for today, my client, Allyn, she created a podcast, When Heaven Meets Hell, and talking about her toxic relationship experience and also talking about the healing journey. So I'm so excited to have her on today. It means so much. She took the podcasting course. She kind of was with me during the beginning of my breakup, and she was going through a breakup herself. So she really kind of switched gears with me and also was like, okay, I want to do something with my story. So I really helped her kind of hone down and give advice on how to create it and how to navigate telling her story, and then connect her with so many other people like Jake Deptula from Strictly Stalking. Now he has Love Less Fear, and so many others where she was able to even get their feedback about her podcast, and it's coming out today. So I'm so excited to have Allyn. We're going to get into this interview, but before, I'm going to play her trailer for you guys. So check out her trailer and then stay tuned for the interview. Hi, Allyn. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you because I feel like you're my baby bird.
I probably feel the same, honestly. Yes,
Yes.
and happy to be it.
Yes. So, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your story and how we've gotten into
Oh my gosh. I just am so grateful, I guess, yeah, for you and to be here and everything. I know we'll get into my story more. Um, I was in a relationship with someone that completely imploded 10 months ago at this time. I was just kind of looking back at the calendar today. And so that flipped my world upside down, shook it around 1 million ways. Um, but throughout that process, everyone has an opinion, everyone has something to say. I was basically not functional at that point in time, but everyone would be like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. This sounds like a Dateline story. This sounds so wild." And I was trying to make it make sense to me. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of any of that, but I didn't know anyone who had gone through anything similar. I was really just stuck in grief and trying to navigate it. And I keep saying all of this is kind of a God thing that has happened in some way, shape, or form, the little bits. And you popped into my mind somehow. I'd obviously seen Dirty John stuff years ago. I know that we had a few like mutual connections. And so I think that was kind of my initial thing, was like, I just want to talk to someone who's been through something remotely similar, even though, it's vastly different what we've been through. But I think at the core, the just kind of basic, what the hell am I doing with this life now, is similar. And so, yeah, I reached out to you, and I don't even know honestly what my ask was at that time. I think it was just like a human, someone other than my family or therapist or doctors. And away we went, you and I, months and months now.
Yes, yes. No, and I think it's great because we kind of started off doing coaching for yourself and to
Yeah.
help you get past that toxic relationship. And then it ends up, I kind of go through a breakup as well. And I felt like my
Yes.
resources were better to help you with a podcast.
Yes. Yes. I totally forgot about that. And like, I think that was such an interesting time too, kind of around when that happened for you. And I think that we are both in an adjustment phase and kind of constantly shifting. I was healing and moving towards wanting to talk about this more, but not rush it. And then you had the breakup happen, and in your kind of capacity and what you were working on shifted too. And I think, yeah, it happened as it should have. And here we are today in like new and improved versions.
Yes, yes. And I think, you're a coach yourself that you
Hmm.
haven't mentioned yet. Can you briefly
Yes.
mention that?
Yeah, totally. So my background is in chronic illness coaching. That's how my business started. Gosh, 4 or 5 years ago. Doing group. I mean, I've done everything from group to one-on-one to membership. And then that kind of morphed into really helping women at their core with personal development work, and mindset. I think that is kind of the basis of what I do, helping people with mental health, because kind of the results I was getting with women who have chronic illnesses, even if you don't solely have those health challenges, my belief is that everyone has something. And so the tools, the techniques, what we are doing applies to people, and you can kind of utilize that based on whatever your something is. And so that kind of shifted things in my business, and that is kind of where I was going with that. And then I think currently working on my show, which I know we'll talk about, and then I think that the coaching stuff is just kind of evolving and shifting into a little bit of a new demographic, but is still there. I think that that's kind of my core and heart of just being of service to others and using what I have to bring others up. I think that that's kind of the basis of the coaching work.
Yes, I love it. And I feel like as coaches, you kind of have a different aspect on coaching. I feel like you sometimes need a therapist, you sometimes need a coach, and really adapt to that part of life. But coaches really help you get to the root of like what you need to work on, and they kind of call you out for it, where therapists kind of help you get to that on your.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I know, both you and I feel like have tried and done a lot of things and everything. And I myself have been in various forms of therapy for a long time too. And I think it's always interesting to see what other people are doing, or just different ways to work through things. And there's obviously, I'm not a licensed therapist. There's so much that they do that I can't practice, and also is not, ethical to do, but that gets you results in a very different way. And then there's things that I do in the capacity of a coach that is out of their wheelhouse, kind of like what you're saying. And I think that I always kind of look at everything, and I have with myself personally, as a kind of a puzzle, and everyone has a piece, and you're not, unfortunately, going to go to one person and just, there's no master key. And I would love for that to be the case. I think everyone kind of looks for that one thing, but it's really kind of like going around and figuring out what the different pieces are and how to fit it together for you. And it's really kind of like that journey of just figuring it out and finding the pieces. And I think that that's kind of, you can have a coach, and then you can have a therapist, and you can have people doing different modalities. And I think that that's the beauty of it. And we kind of get stuck in this mindset of, oh, I need one person or one thing, and it's going to fix it all. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of a coach is that. And I also like to come on and kind of, not necessarily have the oversight over all of it, but kind of help you get organized on like, what are you working on, and where like the needle movers based on your goals, and help you with that too. So that's kind of another thing I feel like in that realm. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yes. So I bring up the coaching and everything because I feel like that is a vast of like your healing journey in a sense. And then you did so many other things like, going
Yeah.
to the hot huts. What are they called?
I did a sweat lodge.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I did a lot of so when I came home from this, so that like bit if I can't even talk, little bit of backstory, is that I was dating someone who was out of state from where I was. So I came home and was dealing with the betrayal, the grief, and trying to figure out which way was up. And my background being chronic illnesses, I knew I didn't want to go on a lot of medication. That's an option. That's totally an option for people. But I felt like my life had been medication based for so long, and my doctors knew that. That was always kind of a goal of mine, was to get off of things. And so when this happened, it was like, how do we manage what you're feeling and going through, but do it in the best way to make you comfortable now? And I think sleep was a big priority for me. I knew I started some things to help me sleep, because I would just ruminate 24/7. So trying to get me to sleep and give my brain a rest was big. But aside from that, I didn't personally want to go on anything to kind of affect my mood. I kind of just wanted to feel it out. And that was so hard at the time. But my thought was, I want to feel this now and not feel it in a year. And that's a personal choice, totally. So that also meant that I just kind of did a deep dive into some other non-conventional things, one being the sweat lodge. I went away to Arizona for a little bit. And I have always had a very spiritual side. I've participated in a lot of different like healing circles, different healing modalities. Never done a sweat lodge before, and I always want to make sure that it's obviously in line with the cultural practices. I don't want to ever um, not be appropriate with that. And so I had reached out to, gosh, I forget who it was exactly, but it was someone with a tribe there and kind of got connected through something. And yeah, I went onto a reservation in Arizona. My mom was with me. My mom was like, "Where are you? What are we doing?" And I was like, "I know it sounds insane, but I felt like I had this energy, this dark energy consuming me that I couldn't get rid of." And I'm also like a very energetic person, and I don't necessarily mean that in terms of like energy levels. I just mean in terms of intuitive and like feeling stuff. And I felt like I had been with this person. We had been so intimately intertwined, and I needed to like get rid of him from me in all the ways. And so yeah, I did the sweat lodge. It was a wild, wild experience. They were so welcoming and kind, and it is something I will never forget. Um, it definitely took everything out of me, and I think I, yeah, met all the edges of myself in that experience, and it was super beautiful. And also I mean, you're in the pitch black. You're in a hole in the ground in the pitch black.
Back to the sweat lodge.
The
You're
sweat
getting rid of
lodge.
this energy. Let's
Yeah.
go into this energy and who you had to get rid of. How did you
Hmm.
meet him and how did you find out he was so
Yeah, so we met on, gosh, I had to think about that. We met on Bumble, good old Bumble. Um, we met on there. The irony of all ironies is that I initially swiped no, and then I don't even know if anyone can tell me how this happens. I like he came back around. I don't know how that works, but he came back around, and his profile was a little bit different. It had like a few more pictures and stuff like that, and I swiped yes. And that changed everything, obviously, how different life would be if I hadn't have done that. And so that is how we met. I I'm trying to think. I was just leaving where he was at the time, and so we don't live in the same place. I had been house sitting in the town that he was in for a while, so I was visiting for like a month on dating apps, going on dates. So we matched at the very end of my time where he lived. But we matched and kept talking, and I was open to something with distance in it. I didn't really have a huge preference with that. Um, and we just kept talking, and he was persistent and kind and charming and great. And the first time we met, I was a few weeks, gosh, 2 or 3 weeks later. It moved really quick. I flew out to meet him. I came back for the 4th of July, and that was the first time we actually met in person. And away we went. Like that weekend, he said, "Oh, well, we're together. You're my girlfriend." And it was just fast and furious. And so I, to answer your question on when I realized what I was dealing with, I did not until the very end when things ended. And it's hard because looking back, I can sit here and say, "Oh, well, I kind of noticed this and I kind of noticed this," but he walked the line so tightly. And so there were things that would make me say, "Oh, that's kind of odd," or "I'm not super comfortable with that," or we would have conversation after conversation over certain things. Um, but obviously, and they always say it, like if everything was bad, you wouldn't be with them. And how true is that? If, if I was aware of any of it or even half of it, it would have never been what it was. So it truly wasn't until the end in October I was out here, and I was supposed to move out here in the end of October. This was the very start of October. I had dinner ready, hanging out. He was supposed to come over, and he texted me that he thought things moved too fast and he needed a break. And I said, "What? What the heck?" And at this point in time, he had proposed, both of our families, like, we had been deeply intertwined with each other's families, moving, all the things. We had talked about kids, all of this stuff. And so I was like, what the heck are you talking about? And I said, is this a breakup? And he said, yeah, I think that's for the best right now. And that was that. I didn't call. I just felt like you're 10 minutes away from me. You're not going to give me the FaceTime. You're not going to answer a phone call. And then from there, it snowballed to learning everything about him over the next 48 hours, and then probably 2 weeks in particular, when more and more came out about him and who he is and what he does and how he operates, I guess you can say. Which is, there's a lot to it, but yeah, I would say I didn't know until the very end. I was super blindsided, and yeah, I had no idea who I was dealing with.
One of the aspects that I think is really interesting of your story too is that you were essentially the take me back home girl. But how long from meeting him did you meet his parents and then get engaged?
So fast. Okay, I have a timeline. If it didn't like eat up so much of my computer, I'd pull it up right now. So probably 2 weeks after I met him, I met his parents, his whole family. So mom and dad, all of his siblings, nieces, nephews, uncles, aunts, cousins. We went to a big family thing for like almost a week. So I met everyone. And so that was very fast. So that's all within a month, under a month of talking to him. I mean, we're in with that. And then he met my parents probably within I think a few weeks later he came out. It was kind of like, oh, I met yours, you meet mine, kind of. It was very quick. And then the weekend that he met my parents, he proposed that night. So
that's like a month?
It's I need to look at the calendar, but probably a month and a half, 2. Yeah.
He has my mom's record beat.
Oh no. And I know, like, it sounds so crazy. The family thing, I didn't like. A family's a big value for me. It was for him, I believed. I don't, who knows. Hindsight, I understand why he introduced family so fast, for sure. And then the engagement, the proposal was very just so, and like, it was just the two of us in my room at my house. But earlier that day, he had been like, can we go look at rings? So I could almost say it was random, but at the same time, it's like earlier that day, he was talking about rings. He wanted to go ring shopping. And then also that night after he did it, he was like, can we please FaceTime my sister and tell her? And I was like, I don't really want, like, for me, I needed some things in the relationship to change. It wasn't a proper proposal. Like, I also wanted him to meet my brothers, really important to me. there were things that needed to happen, but to me, it was a commitment that I'll be with you. I loved him so much. It was a commitment that I was looking at in a certain way, but more things needed to happen before we go and announce that we're engaged. But he convinced me to call his sister and the whole nine. And like from there, his sister was introducing us as fiancés to her friends, and all of that. He like solidified it pretty quick. But um, yeah, it's like the roller coaster took off, and you can't control it once it's going.
Yeah, well, that is a lot of love bombing, and that would make someone feel so special.
Yes, I did. I did. Totally. And it's funny because it's like, I'm aware of what love bombing is. And I have kind of gone over this and thought about it and talked about it on my show. I almost feel like because he said, I love you so fast, I kind of thought I just thought it was a joke. I was like, that's funny. Not like it wasn't an LOL moment, but I was like, that's so absurd. I know that that's not true. Or some of the things he said. And so I almost felt like he hit me at like a window where it was just an interesting time, I guess, with love bombing. It's not like, at 2 weeks in, he finally said it and I was like, oh, that'd be fast. It was like he said it right away to where I was like, okay, I know that we both know that's not true. So it was like so absurd. Um, but yeah, he totally did it. And it's just a wild experience to go through that and kind of how he operates. And it did it makes you feel good. You're like, oh, this is nice. But I also was like, this is not, you know, true at this, and then it grew into what it was. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting that he hits you with the love bombing and you're like put off at first by it. But at times, I feel like as women too, we just appease because that is a natural response to us. And if someone's giving you love, you kind of don't want to be like, oh, I want to kick him to the curb right now. You're like, oh, let's see where this goes. Let's see if he could prove his love in a sense.
Yeah, totally. I um I say this too, that I feel like I was kind of trying to be more accepting a little bit, like in dating or on the apps and stuff. My friends are kind of like, you're notorious for going really fast, like just no, 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 no. And so they're like, do you even look at the person? I'm like, yes, I know what I'm looking for, or whatever. And or they're like, you talked to that person for 1 second. I was like, yeah, but I know. Um, and so, when you and I have talked about this, it was Bumble, so I had to message him first, and I said something generic like, hey, how's your day going? And then he messaged me with like the hey, dream woman thing. And that just was a total ick, but I let it slide. And it's to your point of the appeasing thing. It was like, Allyn, it was like, be cool, like, see what he has to say. And I kind of made a joke about it, like, wow, that big shoes to fill. And we just went about it, but it's like, I totally let that one slide. And then we kept, and again, here we are. But yeah, I felt that a lot, where it was just like, there were those micro moments where I abandoned myself when I didn't need to, but he just ran right through it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, during our coaching, during your therapy, you like realize that you had those ick moments and you really trust your gut. But that's
Mm-mm.
something that other people told you to brush aside. You're too picky or you're too,
Yes,
you're, but be picky.
totally. Yeah, yeah. I think that too, looking back, I had a big thing of, and I think anyone and everyone would do it, is where did I go wrong, or how on earth did I end up with this person? And something that, you helped me with, or my therapist did too a lot, was like going back and identifying those moments and saying, well, you're not quote unquote broken, or you're not picking the wrong people. Like, you're seeing it, you just were manipulated so well that you push past it. And so that made me feel a lot better too. And I think that that's something for other people. If you're feeling like, how did I get here? It's like, we all know. And if you can kind of go back and identify those things, I think that that does help a lot. It doesn't make you feel all the way better. I still felt like total crap for going through the experience, but it's like, oh yeah, I did, like, give yourself some credit that you at least saw things, and were aware. And it's like, your body knows, your mind knows. It's just, you get sucked into this vortex of everything, and it's hard. But yeah, to be able to identify that, I think helps a lot.
Yeah. Now let's go into the juicy part. The juicy part of your story, Allyn. And I only say this because I've been working, helping you coach with your podcast and stuff. So we're well aware of like what the juicy part is. But tell me how you found out about all these other women.
Okay, well, you'll love this because I just went to dinner last night with one of the other women. Oh, life has brought us here. And I was rehashing this with her, and she's like, wait, remind me. And I was like, we were going over it. So he broke up with me on a Friday night via text, and I didn't talk to him. I think just a little mini back education for people is that, when I met him, obviously he was marketing himself as single, which is what I would be looking for, is someone single. And as you guys will hear in my show, throughout our relationship, his ex was introduced at different points in time, always described as his ex, but slowly having more and more involvement in our lives. But also described as just not a normal human, quote unquote crazy. His family really had issues with her. And I think that was something too that I trusted more, because his family backed that, and it wasn't just him saying, oh, my ex is crazy. I think if anyone says a woman's crazy, it's like, well, let's question that a little bit. But his family was also kind of backing it, and I was like, okay, I don't know the whole history, something's gone on, but it is what it is. And so that's just kind of backstory, is like, there was always some form of involvement with her that we were working on. So he broke up with me on a Friday. I never met her, obviously. I knew her name. And Saturday night, I'm sitting right here. It's crazy that I'm like in this house, because this is not my house. I'm sitting here in this house, and I am trying to distract myself, watching like my comfort show, and I look on, I don't even know why. I think because his sister had told me that she had a message or something. So I looked on Facebook Messenger, and I had a message that had been sent. Like, I had a message request from her, but then it had been deleted. So it still shows like that you have a message, but when you click on it, there's nothing there. And everything in my body said, don't do it. But I said, I'm so tired of this, of not knowing. I have nothing left to lose. I'm out here by myself. I don't have any answers. And I messaged her and I said, "Can I help you?" And she replied like lickety split, and she said, I still have the messages. I forget the exact wording, but it says, "I found your letter in his truck. I'm his girlfriend slash fiance of 3.5 years. I live with him. He told me he broke up with you for me. We're together all the time. I also just found out he's been cheating on both of us with all these other women." And then it was just an onslaught of photos and screenshots, and I just froze. And I don't even know. I don't know. I can't say if I was surprised or not. I think I was um taken back by how direct, like it was just, "Here's what's going on." And then she goes, "He's right here with me if you want to call and talk to us." And I was like, "Okay." So I called. It's just like you reach a point. You reach a point where you just don't care. And so I called the number and she answered and she said, "Hi, Allyn." And she said, "He's right here if you want to talk to him." And she had on speakerphone, and you can hear her like walk up to him, and he gets nasty on the phone and says like, get out of my face, I'm not talking to you anymore, blah blah blah. And she gets back on the phone and she goes, "Yeah, that's how he talks to me." um and I just was started sobbing, and I flipped into like, "I'm so sorry." All of a sudden I feel bad. I feel bad that I was dating your person now. Like I'm now apologizing to her for having been with him. And I kind of just apologized and said, "I'm so sorry." And she was like, she had no feeling, no emotion. She was like, "Yeah, it's crazy. I know all this information." I couldn't get words out, and I just said, "I'm sorry. I have to talk to you later." And I hung up. And from there, it was just like more information, more information, more information. And the juicy stuff just kept coming, I guess. But that's kind of the base, that's kind of the foundation of like how it started.
Okay, okay. And did he ever talk to you that way as well?
No, no. So never, we never, I want to say we never fought. We had disagreements for sure about living situations, what he was doing to handle things with his ex. Um, but we never had like a blowout fight. We never raised our voices at each other. We had one argument. I say argument because it was not good. I was at his house one night and I found lingerie under his bed, and he like reverse psychology, like mind effed me, and I got upset and just walked away. And I think that was like the biggest, what you would say, fight we had. Um, but no, he never spoke to me that way. He never cussed at me. If he like ever said anything like remotely like hurry up or something, I'd be like, "Oh, do you know who you're talking to? Like watch how you're speaking to me." And so no, he never. So when I heard that, I was kind of like, what is going on? But I had heard them talk to each other in the background of phone calls before. Probably like a few months into us dating is the first time I heard her in the background of a phone call. And they would just yell at each other. And so I knew they had kind of a hostile relationship, and I that like tracked with them being exes and like the narrative of her being different and stuff like that. So yeah, but no, I had never heard him speak to anyone that way, and he had never spoken to me that way. Um, so I was like, "Oh, we're in different territory." now.
Yeah, and that's what it could lead to in a sense. You know, you
Yeah,
like you put up with it. Well, you don't put up with stuff, and then it's like, okay, it keeps happening, and he gains your trust and dependency and everything, and then you're like, okay, when he treats me this way now, I don't have the energy to stand up for myself anymore because he's just gonna do it.
totally. Yeah, I think that I hit kind of an interesting time. Like, so I don't know the full, I don't know what's true and what's not true. And so I can't speak to everything with them. Um, I do know their relationship. I don't know how much was on, how much was off, but like at least the 3 years, I think minimum. I don't know, but I feel like at that point, like you're pretty worked over if you were to have been around him. And so I feel like I had just a different enough experience with him and time frame with him to where um I went through it a little differently and saw it a little differently. And so she and I could kind of commiserate over what it was like to be cheated on, and we had similar experiences with just like some of his behaviors, but we had very different, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sad." And I'd be like, "He's sick and disgusting." And, and I was like, "It's very sad. I'm very sad that my life didn't work out the way I had envisioned. I had envisioned that I would be getting married and doing all these things that we had planned." But she was like, "I'm trying to make it like trying to make it work." We had very different mindsets about it, and I think part of that is just the time frame that you're in. Like, she had been in it and yeah, worked over, and I think it is tiring. And had I been in it longer, I know that my experience would have been different too, because it is a lot to kind of go through that and get sucked into all the which ways, and you just lose yourself. And so I think that that's kind of what you see with that too.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm just thankful you weren't in it longer and that you got out and you did so much healing work. It's just tremendous. And for me, you were a dream client. And I hate to use those words together, but it was true, because you did all the steps, you did all, and even, creating your podcast, you were so on it in a sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's so weird. I am not grateful for it at all. Would never want to relive it, have it go down, have anyone go through it. But it's also given me this platform, or this ability, I guess, to talk about these things. Um, and I think that these things need to be talked about a lot. And so, yeah, I think when I came out of it, I felt this thing, and I know told you early on, I was like, I need to talk about this. Um, and I know, and I am very grateful for you that you were like, you need to take your time, take your steps. You're not in a rush. And even the other day, when I released my trailer, they were like, you did this really fast. And I was like, I know, I don't think there's any, there's no book on like how quickly you do these things. And I, um, I think, it's your own process. The gal who I did ketamine therapy with, she always just told me like, do it, whatever you do, do it clean. And I think that that really stuck with me. And I feel like that's kind of like an iteration of what you always said was, and what she meant by that was just like, tell your story, talk about it whenever you want to, but do it from a clean place and not from a place of like revenge or being messy about it or anything. And I think that meant a lot, and that's always kind of what I'm trying to do with it, because at the end of the day, this story is not about him. I have to talk about him to give it context and make it make sense, but it's not about him. was about him for way too long. That was the focus of my life for way too long. But like this is now, it's not even my, I mean, it's about me in a little bit, and you know, in a little ways, but it's more so about like helping other people and everyone learning from this experience. And that's kind of the goal of it. And I think also when I went to move on with my life, I was like, how do I not talk about this? Because it felt like a million little deaths in my life. And that just felt so wrong to me. I know that's also my personality, but to not talk about it felt super inauthentic. I was like, I can't just move on and be like, here's my new program and my offer. And like, sorry, I've not talked to anyone for the last however many months. So I had to kind of connect the dots, I guess, for other people, but also for myself. So there's kind of a lot going on with that, but I think that was just kind of my process with it. And then once I started working on it, it was just kind of like opening the gates on it. And you've obviously been super instrumental in it. And there's been a few other people who have been really helpful in just bringing it to life, but making sure, yeah, it's done in a way that always feels like good and supportive and not like I'm doing it for any other reason, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And what are the takeaways that you want for people to have from your podcast?
Hmm. I would say that you are never alone, for starters. I think, first and foremost, I think going through this feels super isolating. I I didn't talk about it. You'll hear in the show, but I covered for him so much because I thought this was the person I was going to marry and, you know, everything. And so even when his behavior got a little bit sideways, I did not, like, I told my friends that some things were happening, but like, I never fully told people. And even my therapist, I didn't fully tell her what was going on. And, I think it can be isolating all around, and even so it can be isolating from the very start and then after, because when you're going through it you don't have a partner who's actually there, like they're not actually emotionally there and able to support you, and then coming out of it too. And I think that you're not alone, like that's been the biggest thing for me, has been the community after. And it's been very small, like I haven't talked about it, obviously I have started now when I dropped a trailer. But prior to that, just kind of telling people in my family and stuff. And I think just kind of using your voice in that sense and knowing that like you are so supported in who you choose to tell. And I think that opening up in that sense can be super helpful. And then the second thing, I mean, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do this is because it looks like a lot of different things. And I'm talking in terms of abuse in relationships. And that's something I talk about a lot in the show, but I just want to raise more awareness and kind of open conversations about that, because I didn't realize until I was literally sitting in a police station filing a report for something not even related to what he did to me. But what I had found out about him, until like they started questioning me more, and I had a total light bulb moment and was like, oh my God, that was not okay. And then I started learning a lot more and having conversations about abuse in relationships and what that looks like and all these things. And I have learned a ton and all of that stuff, but it's never what you think it is or what you see on the movies or shows. And I think because we have that in our minds, a lot of people stay, or a lot of people are in relationships that aren't healthy. And I just kind of want to have that and be like, you don't have to be around that. You don't have to stay. That actually isn't right. And just kind of open up those things, because I would have married someone who was doing these things to me. And I like, his superpower was walking the line so close. And he never fully, like I've said time and time again, like he never fully went over. And if he did that, I would have been gone in a second. But it was like we tiptoed the line every single day. And I just want to kind of talk about that. And so I think that that's a takeaway, is kind of learning about that. So just community and awareness. You guys also will hear from a lot of experts, you being one, Dr. Nadine, some other amazing people too, just more so about like what is actually going on, and how to kind of identify things and kind of work to break those more tangibly, I think, which is super helpful. So there's kind of the education, awareness, and also just like empowerment, I feel like, coming out of it is the hope for people.
I love it so much. And I feel like
Thank
I
you.
have a million more questions to ask you, but I'm going to wrap it up and then do some questions for the Patreon. But where can we
Okay.
find your podcast, everything?
Yes. So Instagram is at Allyn Amerongen, so Allyn, and then it'll probably pop up, I feel like. And then let's see, finding the podcast is When Heaven Meets Hell, and it is on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, all the platforms. It is there. It launches officially on August 20th and will be every week on Tuesday. So yeah, you can find it on any of those platforms where you stream your shows.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we'll continue
Thank
on
you.
to the Patreon.
Thank you, baddies, for listening to today's episode with Allyn. Check out When Heaven Meets Hell. It's so great. I am just so excited for the podcast. So I want everyone to check it out for my survival anniversary, because today is a really hard day for me. My body feels it, keeps the score, also grieving that relationship. But I have a lot of incredible friends in my life. I have an incredible client now, friend Allyn, and I'm just so ecstatic for her, because it's not easy to tell your journey. And she did it in such a short amount of time from the breakup. I think it was a year or something the other day. And so I'm so proud of her. Check it out wherever podcasts are available. And until next time, I'm Tara Newell, and thank you for listening to this episode.